very interesting input. This brings us to the end of the fourth session of our meeting. Let us now turn to the adoption of the draft final document, which will be presented at the COP26 meeting in Glasgow. As you know, there were two co-rapporteurs, the President of the Environment Committee of the Chamber of Italy, Alessia, and SOBEL, British MP. I'd like to ask the two speakers now to outline the content of the document. And I'll call on Alessia ROTTA first.
Grazie. Onorevoli Presidenti.
Honourable speakers and presidents, dear colleagues, we have reached the last session of the conference at which, as you know, we should be approving the draft outcome document. The document we are approving today will be examined at the COP26 Parliamentary meeting in Glasgow, where it will be adopted definitively, possibly with amendments. I would like to thank my dear British colleague, Alex Sobel, with whom we were appointed co-rapporteurs for the drafting of the document and with whom we have worked productively and in close synergy, conducting several virtual meetings in which we have shared the spirit, the priorities, and the substance of the draft document we are now laying before you. And we thank everybody. The draft outcome document was published on the conference website. In the course of its preparation, with the support of the Interparliamentary Union, we took account of the many comments and proposed amendments submitted by several parliaments, which I would like to thank also on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Sobel, for their valuable contributions. And once again, I thank the IPU. Further comments and remarks on the text adopted in Rome can be submitted by the 22nd of October for the drafting of the final document, which will be published on the 1st of November, pending its final adoption at the closing session of the preliminary meeting at COP26 in Glasgow. When preparing the draft outcome document, we have sought to incorporate as many comments and inputs from as many parliaments as possible, with the main aim of maintaining a high level of ambition in the conclusions and a clear awareness of the need to focus our attention at this crucial moment in the fight against climate crisis on transnational issues that, despite the appreciable efforts made by individual countries, remain unresolved and are drastically hampering progress towards climate neutrality by 2050. This is why paragraph 1 of the document urges the parties to make COP26 a turning point in which ambitious commitments are adopted for a green, inclusive and sustainable recovery from the pandemic, which will ensure that the global temperature increase does not exceed 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. We realize that there was a debate on this and we have to be ambitious. We have said this many times during these days. We realize that the Paris Accord referred to the target of staying well below a 2% increase, but we urge everyone to bear in mind that in the years that have elapsed since that agreement, the climate emergency has worsened dramatically, requiring everyone to make choices today that, while certainly not easy, are clear-cut and irreversible if we are to avoid irreparable consequences that will be particularly detrimental to future generations. We've heard this said, and we have said this many times in the last few days. We know that the World Health Organization estimates that by 2030, climate change could cause around 250,000 more deaths each year due to malaria, malnourishment, and heatwave stress. The World Food Programme data also show that climate change is one of the main contributory factors to global food insecurity. The document calls for a series of priorities, not only in terms of mitigating and adapting to climate change and protecting human health and biodiversity, but also in terms of procedures, monitoring, and climate finance. In this connection, I should like to draw attention to the following aspects. One, the need to demand a central role for parliaments in addressing climate issues, also by adopting instruments for analyzing the climate impact of legislation. We cannot do what we've done so far. We have to monitor our steps forward. Introducing a mechanisms for calculating transnational emissions and the transnational monitoring of compliance with national emission reduction targets. Increasing funding for developing countries with particular reference to the objective of raising $100 billion a year for the least developed countries. This is an essential goal. Emphasizing the role of science and technology in implementing climate adaptation and mitigation policies. The link between science and technology, environment, and protecting health. We have learned that this cannot be underestimated, as COVID has taught us. Combating the climate crisis is the main global challenge that requires each of us today to abandon political and national selfishness and opportunism and embrace a mitigation and adaptation strategy based on commonly shared values of responsibility, cooperation, solidarity, and vision. This is the final appeal we must respond to before the crisis becomes irreversible. Therefore, let us all work together, friends, to make environment and climate the engines to bring about a period of equitable and sustainable development and not a threat for the destiny of humanity. Thank you.
Ringrazio la Presidente Rotta per il suo lavoro. Invito a intervenire il deputato SOBEL.
Honourable Speakers and Presidents, dear colleagues, I would first like to thank my Italian co-Rapporteur, Alessia ROTTA. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with her on the outcomes document over the last few months. And the last 2 days here at the meeting in Rome, we have found common agreement, values and vision on climate and ecological issues. I'd also like to thank the Italian group to the Interparliamentary Union, the Interparliamentary Union Secretariat, the Italian Chamber of Deputies and Senate for all their support on putting on a wonderful event. I must make a special note of thanks to the IPU President, Duarte PACHECO, for his leadership in this work, and to the IPU Secretary-General, Martin CHUNGONG, for his ensuring that action to address the climate emergency remains at the top of the IPU agenda. Alessia, in the words of his Holy Father, who we met this morning, in his work, Laudato Si, he says, "We need only recall how ecosystems interact in dispersing carbon dioxide, purifying water, controlling illnesses and epidemics, forming soil, breaking down waste, and in many other ways which we overlook or simply ignore." Alessia and I have tried to take this whole ecosystem approach when preparing the outcomes document. And Alessia has clearly outlined the process going forward for us to complete the outcomes document in Glasgow on the 7th of November. And I can only echo the strength of Alessia's words that we need to utilise all the influence of our collective parliaments, not just to reaffirm and set the track for 1.5 degrees rise, but all the effects of a warming planet, including disease, habitat, biodiversity loss, climate migration, flooding, wildfires, loss of small island states, falling and failing crop yields, and much more, which will make our planet uninhabitable. As John Kerry said, Glasgow will be extremely important. In his words, he said, "In fact, I would say that in my judgment, it is the last best chance the world has to come together in order to do the things we need to do to avoid the worst consequences of the climate crisis." With those words in mind, I invite you all to come to Glasgow not just to the IPU conference, but events around it, whether in the Green Zone or the Fringe. And I and my colleagues in the UK lay at your disposal to make your time in Glasgow meet that aim and utilise it as our last best chance to avoid catastrophic climate change. Thank you.
Many thanks, and thank you for your work. Let us now move to the closing remarks. I apologize. The draft outcome document was therefore adopted by consensus at our meeting.
Come concordato.
As agreed, this document may be the subject of further amendment proposals during the parliamentary meeting in Glasgow.
Prego.
Please.
Passiamo.
Let us now move to the closing remarks for our meeting. I'd like to call on the Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union, Martin CHUNGONG, to take the floor.
Distinguished Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of Italy, Madam President of the Senate of the Republic of Italy, Honorable Duarte PACHECO, President of the IPU, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to say a few words in this concluding session of the parliamentary meeting prior to COP26. I have listened with keen attention to the discussions that have taken place during these past 2 days, and I must say that I am heartened by the level of awareness among parliamentarians of the gravity of the climate crisis that we are facing today. I have also been very pleased to note that parliamentarians know what they need to do in order to stem the effects of the climate crisis. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what we have heard today is that we want to go to Glasgow with a stronger commitment by the parliamentarians and parliaments around the world. And as I make these comments, I am reminded of the words of the delegate from the United Kingdom this afternoon. She said, money can move mountains. The mountain we need to move now is political commitment. That is what I want to take back home, that we know what we need to do. We just need to muster political commitment and get on with the business of stemming the climate crisis. So we are all agreed that the parliaments in the world have a strong role to play. They must muster that political commitment in order to ensure that the agreement secured within the context of the COP meetings can be implemented effectively at the national level. We do know that that political commitment is coming, but again, when we meet in gatherings such as this one, we have the impression that all parliaments, all parliamentarians are at the same level of understanding of what needs to be done, what are the issues. But that's not always the case. And that is why the IPU, while convening the meetings like this one that we have here, are also seeking to help parliaments build their capacity to engage effectively with the issue of climate change. And we do this together with partners, our technical partners around the world. For instance, we work with the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Program in order to develop toolkits for parliamentarians on how to address disaster and climate-related risks. We work with the United Nations Environment Agency to look at how we can help parliaments build their capacity to address the challenges of green growth recovery in the context of COVID. So these are things that we are seeking to do. But, Mr. President, Madam President, allow me to use this opportunity to draw attention to something that happened just yesterday. Yesterday, at the United Nations Human Rights Council, a resolution was adopted on the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. This is a breakthrough moment for environmental justice. Acknowledging this right must be universally protected. While the intrinsic link among freedom, equality, dignity, well-being, and a healthy environment has been recognized by a majority of states in their constitutions, legislation, and various regional treaties, this basic human right is far from being realized. So human rights as a vehicle to democracy and development are at the core of what the IPU is all about. We need to promote that linkage between human rights and democracy and the ultimate goal of promoting the well-being of the people. I thought I should mention this very clearly at the close of this meeting. So, dear presiding officers, ladies and gentlemen, and I see my good friend Pier Ferdinando Casini, Honorary President of the IPU, I want to say that we have all been very clear that the warning signals are flashing red and time is running out. A much stronger action and political leadership is needed. I think that message was very clear, as science and young people keep reminding us. We remember the young people were saying, children were saying that they were skipping their lessons to teach us our lesson. I believe that we have heard that lesson and we're about to do something about it. Yesterday, the US House of Representatives Speaker was speaking from this rostrum, and she also said that we need to work more robustly to leave this planet to future generations in a responsible way. And I mentioned also the new Nobel Prize laureate for physics, who said that we need common action to solve the climate crisis, and that the cost of this is minimal. So we cannot afford not to take action. I wish to conclude, therefore, by thanking our Italian host. I believe the President of the IPU will do that more eloquently in his statement, but I would like to say that it has been a pleasure to work with our gracious Italian host here, and we now come away from this meeting knowing that the climate crisis is far from over. We need to work very hard. We have received our marching orders. Let's just get on with it. Thank you very much.
I'd like to call on the President of the Interparliamentary Union, Duarte PACHECO.
Honorable Mr. Roberto FICO, President of the Italian Chamber of the Deputies, Honorable Madame Elisabetta CASELLATI, Speaker or President of the Italian Senate, our friend, Secretary General of IPU, again, the Honorable President of IPU, our colleague and always reference member of Italian Parliament, Casini. It's a pleasure to come to in this moment to address all of you. First of all, to say thank you to our hosts, the two chambers of the Italian Parliament. We felt during these days at home. It's easy to say, but it is not just words, it's really what we felt. So thank you so much, because your commitment was essential to keep these activities in our agenda, in the agenda of IPU for a long time, because in these times of pandemic, a lot of people did not believe that it will be possible to join parliamentarians across the world, traveling to Italy, to be together to discuss these kind of issues. You believe. You didn't give up, and we are here. Thank you so much for your commitment to organize this event. Dear colleagues, it's very easy. I think that what happened in our last 18 months show to all of us the importance of multilateralism. It shows that we can be egoists. We may think that we are very strong, that each country can resolve their own problems. But afterwards, a small virus that appears in one part of the world, cross continents, affect all of us. Our economies suffered, but worse than that, millions of people died. After it, we have the economic and social consequences of that. So it showed to all of us how interlinked we are, interdependent we are, and we are winning the war against this virus because we decide to work together. We decide to forget religious kind models of economies, to forget if someone is from the south or from the north. We wish work together, and we were available to work together to win the war against this virus. It shows to all of us that for winning and resolve global problems is necessary global action. And so we can see what happened with the virus is what we need to do to all the other global problems that we may face it. And what we have now in climate change, it's very easy. I think that no one can deny the reality. This is a real problem that affects all continents, all countries. Everyone are suffering with what's happening now, and we will suffer more if we don't change our behavior, if we don't act right now. And this way, dear friends and colleagues, we need to take action. And what we have done here for these 2 days is very important, because we show our commitment to real act. To not just to meet each other, what it was very important, of course, and we are missing it. But what we did here in these 2 days is to show that we are going on, make some pressure also in our own governments to go to Glasgow ready to negotiate and to find one agreement that is essential to the humankind. And our final declaration is referred that. So, it was important to be here. So, our results are important and good results. But it's just one step. We need to give the other steps very soon. Dear colleagues and friends, please, during the next month, do what is possible to do to make our other colleagues from different parties our colleagues from different political ideas to understand the importance of ACT right now. May what is possible to have an open negotiation process in Glasgow. And after it, we will go to Glasgow, not just to attend more one meeting, not just to meet each other again, but to be there and to make the pressure that will be essential to assure that one agreement will be achieved. So, what I will say now is very short words. See you in Glasgow very soon. Not just to be happy, but to really realize what we need to do. One agreement in Glasgow. Thank you so much.
Invito
And I'd like to call on the President of the Senate of the Italian Republic, Maria Elisabetta Alberto Casellati, to take the floor. Please. President FICO, President PACHECO, President Casini, Secretary CHUNGONG, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I wish to thank you for the knowledge and enthusiasm you have contributed to these 2 intense days of debate, during which we had the honor and the excitement of being received at the Vatican by the Holy Father. The world looks on Francis, apart from its one's personal religious creed, as a point of reference, also because of his deep awareness of the importance of stewardship of the environment. We have heard the voices of many members of Parliament from all over the world who, together with representatives of science, civil society and international organizations, have expressed how significant and urgency it is to respond to the challenge of climate change worldwide. And in particular, I wish to thank the 2 co-rapporteurs of the draft outcome document, Alessia ROTTA of the Italian Parliament and SOBEL of the British Parliament, for the excellent document we've just adopted in line with the outlook and the proposals which have emerged from our interparliamentary dialogue. This document clearly stresses the decisive role which parliaments and members of parliament can have in implementing climate and environmental goals in the Paris Agreement and in Agenda 2030. A role linked not only to their work to stimulate, guide and oversee the work of national governments, but also for the production of a cooperative setting internationally by disseminating good practices and effective working methods. And naturally, the legislative assemblies have to give concrete implementation to the international commitments underwritten by the executive. And parliaments can also promote a growth of awareness among citizens of the climate issue, contributing to the great transformation in lifestyles and production and consumption models which are involved in ecological transition. The strategy and plans of action to recover from the pandemic, therefore, have to be merged with a green change, with the awareness that this can also bring huge benefits in terms of economic growth and expansion of new jobs and development opportunities. During our proceedings here in Rome, many have stressed that the climate crisis involves worsening inequality in both inside countries and between countries. And therefore it is fundamentally important that the wealthiest countries, which have been those most responsible for harmful emissions for the climate, fully mobilize the requisite financial resources for mitigation and adaptation activities. It has also been stressed that research and innovation are of great importance for climate goals. With the increasingly sophisticated development of clean technologies and low or zero environmental impact energy resources, I believe that the outcome of this meeting, together with the recent Parliamentary Summit of Speakers, which has given great attention to climate issues, may provide momentum to the political and negotiation process, which in a few weeks' time will lead to COP26 in Glasgow. I'm sure that the British presidency of the UN Conference on the Climate, in partnership with Italy, will be able to make the best of the proposals from Parliament, and in Glasgow too, where the unsolved issues in the Paris Agreement will be brought up. Parliaments will make their voices heard to contribute to the multilateral process to build consensus around international climate policies. The young people who gathered in Milan a few days ago, representing the climate movement, which has filled the squares all over the world, asks the decision makers to act rapidly to save the world for the future generations. As elected representatives of citizens, we must do everything we can in order to provide them with concrete and possible solutions. In the hope that the proceedings of the conference and your stay in Rome have been satisfactory, I thank you for your participation, and I wish you a safe return to your countries. Thank you again. Good evening, everybody. Again, we've reached the conclusion of our proceedings. I simply wish to thank all of you for the great amount of work you have carried out and the great quality of your statements, and for having made a dream come true in a way, a multicultural, plural Parliament, and reading your names, reading the names of everybody before you spoke was something which excited me, reading the names of members of Parliament from all over the world. There's one point which I would like to stress here, and that our political agenda to save the planet is essential, and I'm very glad to share with you the understanding that I see that this is a world political agenda we all agree on. And so it is simply time to do more, simply time to act in all our parliaments, which are the central forums for our democracy, a democracy which, if we want it to develop as well as possible, can never relinquish dealing with environmental issues. And we can say one other thing, looking towards COP26. Basically, we all recognize ourselves as human beings who live on a planet which we must protect. And therefore, being aware of this, also as a result of events like the present one, I'm sure that the path we will travel will be the right and hopeful one. And therefore, I thank you again, wishing to